closer to Christ through conference, where two friends share our own approach to studying general conference. It's good to have you guys with us today.
Thanks for being here.
Today we get to talk about Elder D. Todd Christofferson's talk entitled The Testimony of Jesus. And I thought, what a fitting talk for Amy to take the lead on. I'll open up with just kind of a synopsis, a little brief paragraph. Elder Christofferson noted in the opening of his talk that President Oaks had taught about this in previous conference, and they weren't surprised that it was going to be Elder Oaks and then Elder Christofferson at this conference.
Yeah,
we were all surprised. I'm always like, who's going to be next? But
Yes.
he wasn't so surprised by it. And then we had already talked in our last one about how we think that talk in October really built on what we heard. Or am I on?
Yes,
what month?
October.
Into this
Yes.
April conference.
Exactly.
Like, my months are confused right now, so I don't know if I was going to say that right. Here's the quote. Through the triumph and glory of the Lamb, all but a relatively few individuals are eventually redeemed into one of these kingdoms, according to the desire manifested through their choices. And then he reminds us that God's plan of redemption is a universal opportunity for all his children, because it is for every single person, whenever, wherever they may have lived on the earth.
I love that, Abby.
This is compounding with Elder Karen's talk too.
I know, right?
That's the thing, the good and the bad. We have just entered into nothing bad, just the good. The great thing about studying conference talks and putting time into one, it's like it compounds.
It totally does. And you find yourself saying, I already heard this. I've already learned this. However, there's more there.
There's another little line that just further
Yes.
deepens if you've got the weight behind, the one sentence. You're like, oh yeah, that just brought back all these memories, and then like the next piece.
Totally.
So
It's true.
I'd love I'd love to. Okay, let's see. My mind just went blank. I was trying to think of something from Elder Karen's talk, but I'm gonna divert that for a minute. Tell me when I shared that quote with you about how through people's choices,
Yes.
we're reminded that this is for every single person, whenever, wherever. Like, what does that spark in you?
So it's so interesting because the thing that came to my mind, Abby, I love this so much. Okay. So I didn't get this on the first pass.
Okay.
But to be honest, it's a bit challenging to like we were just saying, it's challenging to study talk after talk and receive something new in every single talk, right? Someone wouldn't be too far off if they said that each talk says the same thing, because let's be honest, they have a lot of the same threads that are wound throughout because we're talking about the gospel of Jesus Christ. Or maybe I just feel that way because I prayed at the beginning of this when we jumped into the podcast. I prayed that the similar threads being woven throughout each talk would come to mind. So maybe that's why I feel like it. I don't know. Maybe it's just because it already is that way. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's two-part, because I think just an initial passing, I can usually be able to say, okay, they talked a lot about trials and overcoming trials and how we can find joy in our trials. And
Yes.
they talked a lot about temples, and covenant making, right?
Mhm.
That's kind of just like the face value. But then as we get into each talk, even pieces of like, how to anchor ourselves for the foundation, or the importance of a temple garment, or
Yes.
I can talk one after the next, but like the last few, especially because we're getting to this. That's what I was going to say. That's where my mind was. We finished our last episode was Elder Oaks. That was the finishing up of the last Sunday morning. We've turned into the last. This is probably the one most of you got a nice nap in. So these are ones.
It's tiring to listen to all of them, right?
Is, but I actually stayed awake the whole time. This time I was writing enough notes that I don't usually stay awake. And even Elder Uchtdorf talked about how the best type of sleep is like church sleep or whatever. I don't know. The way he said, I was like, oh, good. He's done it before too, so I don't have to feel so bad. But again, it's in print. It's in listening form. Like, you can catch it again. But what I think is great is, for sure, as we're getting into these last talks, because we have 4 other sessions of conference that's kind of already been on our minds and we've been thinking about them. These are hitting differently.
They are.
And so you made the point with that. I'm glad that it only took 4.5 minutes for me to remember what I was trying to think of before. Okay, so let's be serious. You pray and ask the Spirit to show you similar threads, and I love that you did that. And especially if there could be threads that you see that I don't see, but if it relates to the question that you're asking, like, what am I ready for more information on? What do
Right?
I want to grow in?
What if it's just my similar thread?
We've definitely
hmm
gathered with women to discuss conference after the fact, and we do see different. We
We
do
do.
think that the
We
main theme
heard
of
different
conference was
things.
different, and
hmm
that means the Spirit was testifying to us what those threads were. But
For sure.
regardless of how we come about that to show us these threads, is there anything um, else that you've learned as you've prayed or as we studied for this podcast? Is there like further information that you've gathered from what those similar threads look like to you?
Yes. So, I share this because it might help someone else. This is just my process and what I've done. I pray that the Spirit will help me identify the one thing that this talk teaches or that teaches it differently than the other talks
Mm-hmm.
because they do layer on each other. And so as I recognize the similarities, I'm able to discern first where they're the same and then discern where there is a slight change in each talk. And that's what stood out to me here. So as Elder Christofferson spoke about God's final judgment, my brain first said, oh, I've heard about this before.
Mm-hmm.
This is a similarity. And then when I heard according to the desires manifested through their choices, I recognized that that was the difference right there.
Like people will assume that they're getting rated or graded into a kingdom when you're like, no, you had full control of having whatever you wanted of
Yeah.
the Father's offerings.
So you understood that part. I didn't
No,
at
no,
the
no.
beginning.
I'm having this conversation with you
Totally.
now as I'm like listening to what you found as
Mhm.
important. I'm thinking, yeah, because a lot of times the conversation is somebody that like kind of half in, half out. They kind of don't grasp the importance of why they're partaking of the gospel or not partaking of it at a time, and they want to just make whatever choices they want. But they also are fully aware of all of the blessing God has to offer. There are a lot of people that don't know about the kingdoms of glory. They don't understand that. So
Mhm.
the life they're living is going to grant them the life that they're expecting. This beautiful, like you die and you go to heaven and it's beautiful.
Yes.
But I think it's definitely people in our faith that only want to be like half in, that are like, why can't I just be half in but get everything the Father has to
Okay,
offer?
I love that because this is exactly what it brought me to
Yeah.
because he does say it differently, right? So this is the thing is that I feel like the Holy Ghost helped me like make the connection there, right?
Yes.
And find the slight difference and like you said. So what I
Same principle, but different words, and so it's like hitting a little bit differently.
exactly.
So what did you do with that next? What was the next
So
piece of that process for you?
because it was different, I was like, wait, I've heard this before, but it was a little bit different. Right. So then I Googled the phrase and I found DNC 137.8, which that's where we were taught this in the first place.
Just to reiterate, the phrase being
Okay. The phrase was
according to the desires manifested through their choices
according to the desires. Normally we hear according to the desires
of
of the
their
heart, right? But this was different because
Yes,
he
it is
said
different.
manifested through our choices. So I Googled it to find out where have I heard that before, and it was in DNC 137, verse 8. He says, for I, the Lord, will judge all men according to their works, according to the desires of their hearts. That's what resonated with me because that's what I knew before, right?
Yeah.
So I wondered before, very specifically, the desires of the heart and righteous desires meant, like what it meant in the scriptural contents that we just read, meaning in DNC 137, the desires of the heart refers to those who died without having the knowledge of Jesus Christ in their lives. If they had the restored gospel, they would have accepted it and lived it fully. So just like what you were saying, Abby, was exactly what I was thinking. Because I was like, okay, I understand that that's the scriptural content or context, excuse me. If I was going to apply this right here to me and my life, would it look like this? I didn't live a higher law even when it was made available, but I desired it eventually. And we're judged on our choices and the desire of our hearts. So it says here, I'm judged as if I lived the higher law because I desired to or meant to. Right. And then I was like, oh, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Right. Clearly. So the Spirit highlighted for me because I noticed the difference. Your personal desires are manifested through your choices. So at this point, they're no longer a question. Manifesting is where the spiritual becomes physical. The desires clearly seen in the choices we make. So there's no question anymore. Whereas before I was kind of like, it felt nebulous. It felt like it wasn't concrete. And then the second one was just that I felt like the Spirit taught me was the desires that are out of our control due to another person's agency or, President Oakes talks about this as well, or personal limitations on your body or your circumstances. One of the circumstances might be where or when you were born. So just for an example, like desiring the full gospel of Jesus Christ, but it wasn't on the earth.
Yeah.
Right? That's out of your control. Something else
But
that
when
you,
he's made a way possible to cover all of
that's
that
the whole point, right?
is how we know the nature of him, how beautiful the plan is. It does cover
Absolutely.
that.
It does. So it was just saying in that moment
I
from what they
know.
understood, right? Like if you lived your entire life and never lived a covenant while you were on the earth, that's
Mhm.
what this covers as well.
Absolutely.
Another one could be desiring to be married in this life, desiring a parent to accept the gospel, like we talked about in one of these past
Sister
ones where
Porters.
Sister Porter, she prayed about that her whole life. That is someone else's agency. Desiring a spouse that makes and keeps covenants.
Her parents, her father joining the church and making is an individual thing, but she was praying for like an
She was
eternal
doing her
family,
part.
right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
So that's the other thing too. She did what if her desire was that, but she didn't live her covenant?
that's what, and
You know what
I
I'm
had
saying?
brought that up just a couple of episodes ago. That the things I've thought about since then. She desired an eternal family so much for she wanted that she did marry, she did have a covenant marriage, she did establish an eternal family with her own and her
Yes.
children going forward, until the blessing was finally able to be part hers, when her
Yes.
father also did accept it because of his individual choices.
I love that you said that. So if we're putting it in this context, it would be that where is that part, Abby? I'm trying to find it. So that her choices were made manifest. What is it?
Like where you only have control of your
Yes.
agency. Yeah.
And her desires were made manifest.
There are
in her
limitations
choices.
to what you can achieve on your own.
Love it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. So I just like that further clarification. I really appreciated it when.
And because we're talking about common threads and what we've gathered from other conference talks, as you're talking, I'm thinking, yes, the mentality of like, I know what's there for me to inherit. I want to do this. I want to act in this way. I want to make my daily choices reflect this type of lifestyle. And I'm going to put a name to it. Like, you're living a terrestrial law. You are not living a celestial law. And
Or if you're saying you want to do it, but you're not.
Like, I know, yes,
Mhm.
that's what I'm saying. Like, this isn't to judge anybody, but like somebody that's having that conversation with you, because I've definitely seen it happen. You were given an example of people just saying like, I know that there's a higher law to be lived and I will desire it eventually. Like, I'll live that higher law eventually because I want to inherit that eternally. You don't really know how can you really project when it's too late? Like,
Right.
how do you know that if you're thinking like next month I'm gonna put these things away that are holding me back from making covenants with Father, and then I'll pick them up in a month? Who's to say that that's not the end of your days? Like, tomorrow isn't the end of your days.
Yes.
And I don't want to say that in a threatening way or like a scare tactic. What I'm trying to say is, when you know what blessings are available to you, living celestial, why not take advantage of those in the moment right now? And I understand that things people have to give up, they're like maybe addictions and they're harder things. But even just even manifesting the desire that you want to give those up because you want to live a celestial law is living celestially.
Yeah.
Even if that thing you're doing is a telestial thing, the desire of your heart will make you that following day. Like, I've watched people in my profession like quit smoking, that nothing to do with religion or church. They're not in our church, so this is not a word of wisdom thing. It's just they've felt the bonds of the addiction in their life, and they've been doing it since they were 13, and like they've gotten sick, or like they recognize that it's like holding them back physically, and they choose to quit. Like, the next day they're experiencing some withdrawals, but some positive things. Like, they're already feeling a shift because their mindset's thinking in a different direction.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime you're starting to get free of any bonds of addiction, you're going to feel that. You're going to feel like what the spirit is kind of gaining more strength over the body.
Yeah. And when we're talking about gospel-related principles, like the second that you demonstrate your agency to say, this is the desire of my heart, this is the direction that I want to go. I was like listening to like a church song this morning as I was getting ready for church, and it talked about like how he's reaching out. And I'm like, if I could rewrite that. Really, his hand's always extended, but we have to actually do the reach. I mean, it's like a centimeter. Like, sometimes he's like so close. He's like, I'm right here and I want to help you with whatever you want to help me. Just ding, touch me. And the song's beautiful. I get the message of the song, but he's there. We kind of have to, agency is in every aspect of this. And so we just have to demonstrate that's what we want from it too.
I love that. I loved it so much, Abby. Truly. I never have to worry about this whole, like, I've thought about this my whole life, and I never have to worry from here on out. What is a desire? Amy, guess what? The desire is that thing that you are doing. Like, if you've manifested it by your choices, then that is your
the
desire.
next action that you make should demonstrate that
that's your real desire. So I loved that. There's no more question for me.
When somebody's trying to get out, like if somebody's addicted to alcohol or tobacco, and they try to get out of it. They'll have like their subgroup of friends that are like, why are you doing that? Why are you giving that up? It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't, you're fine just the way that you
Mhm.
are.
And they're
And
not ready to give it up, so it's hard.
right. And in no judgment in that way, like that's them. But just verbalizing that you want to make that change, it's
Mhm.
because you're feeling something in you that's shifting. That's like, this is the thing that's holding me back. And so you're going to go, to the best of your ability. You're going to stop that difficult thing. Most people, like statistically, like if smoking, like you pick it up, like you try to quit, usually takes like 7 times to be effective at quitting. That's the average. That means that some maybe
Wow.
take 10, and some people you hear quitting cold turkey. But I guess all I'm saying is I've watched different people try to give that up and have different levels of success with it. But when I say different levels of success, I'm actually proud of every moment that they've tried to exert like authority over their physical body, and like the
Mhm.
things their body's telling me we need the nicotine, and they're still just saying no. I want to make this change for myself. And so then I can easily relate that to the gospel principles. Like if you're let's say sinning, I'm not even going to put a name to like what sin we're talking about, but your group of friends is actively participating in that and they want you to stay in doing that thing. It makes them feel better about themselves, but you're wanting to change. You don't have to be completely turned away from that thing. You don't have to. I'm not saying not to go cold turkey on the thing that you need to give up. All I'm saying is just the moment that you make that decision
Mhm.
to make that turn and your heart changes, it's as
Mhm.
good as done.
I love that. You've spiritually chosen it.
That's it. And then
Yeah.
sometimes it takes a minute for the physical body to catch up,
I
which we
totally
talked
agree
about.
with
Did
that.
we talk about that in Karen's?
Yes, we did.
That's resonated
It's a
with me.
true principle,
Yes, it
man.
is. Yeah.
Just hold on to that spiritual part, right?
Yeah. And he sees that part more. Isn't that great? I think he sees the spiritual part way more than we're taught to care about the physical. Like, oh, and you still needed to smoke, but it's like, no, but I gave it up in my heart, and that's the direction that I'm working
Mhm.
towards. Maybe I'm gonna go from 2 packs of cigarettes a day to 1.
Mhm.
But in my mind, I'm like, I'm doing this with the intent to be totally free of this addiction. What a beautiful
With the
thing.
plan. Totally.
I love it. So let's
Okay,
let's
so really this right here, I feel like he talked very much about some of the same things that President Oaks talked about. However, I love this part right here because it talks about,
is this a sub point in the talk?
yes, that's exactly what he said.
Okay, so from the talk, there's a quote that he shared of Elder Neal A. Maxwell from 1996. Am
This
I
is
getting that right? I'm not getting that right. I'm gonna have you tell
we're
me
we're
what.
just going to put that in the notes and
Okay.
that'll be fine. I miswrote that, but
Oh, I
this is the
understand.
gist.
Okay, so there is a talk that you find a connection with that you want
Exactly.
people to share. So we're going to put a pod in the podcast note. Like we're the same place that I link the conference talk for you guys to have easy access to. There'll also be a link to a talk that's called According to the Desires of Our Hearts. And so it's something that Amy sees like a strong correlation between. She recalled things from that talk as she was like opening her mind to this new
Yep.
talk. So I'll go on to share this. Those in the celestial kingdom are they who receive the testimony of Jesus, who are just men made perfect through Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant. The inhabitants of the second or terrestrial kingdom are described as essentially good, including the honorable men of the earth, who were blinded by the craftiness of men. Their principal limiting trait is that they are not valiant in the testimony of Jesus. By contrast, those in the lower celestial kingdom are those who receive not the gospel, neither the testimony of Jesus. I feel like those are going to be very few and far between opportunities that we have here and then all of the work that's done. That's still that probationary period after we die.
Hmm.
There's still so much missionary work happening
There
there
sure
too.
is.
Now,
This is like the crux of the entire talk.
note that the distinguished characteristics of the inhabitants of each kingdom is how they relate to the testimony of Jesus, ranging from 1, wholehearted devotion, 2, not being valiant to, or 3, outright rejection. On each person's reaction hangs his or her eternal future.
Isn't that so
Or
interesting?
I added her, but that means that too.
Yeah,
Each person's reaction. Oh, it does say that.
it does.
His
Yeah,
or her
his or her
eternal
eternal
future.
future. So literally everything hangs on our relationship with Jesus Christ.
I love it.
Our number 1, are we valiant? Number 2, are we not valiant? Number 3, do we reject? And those are each of the kingdoms that we're assigned to. And we will abide them, meaning we'll live comfortably in them according to the way we live and we want to live our lives and our desires.
I love it. And I've met so many people that I'm like, they have like the most sweet and pure testimony of Jesus Christ. They're not members of our faith, but it's easy to see how they can inherit like kingdom of glory
Yeah.
and well deserved.
Yep. And they'll be happy with it. We'll all be happy.
They'll totally be happy. We'll all be happy. We choose what makes us happy, and
We
we get
do.
to. We don't have to wait till we die to pick that. Make that choice. We're making it every day in the way that we feel about Jesus Christ and the way we're reflecting it in the actions that we're making.
Mhm.
And I really, I've, if I could rewind, I'm hoping that I didn't say anything offensive. If like I'm calling out like your personal, like the thing that's like holding you back, but
We all
really,
have something.
yeah,
We really do. Call it whatever you
I know
want.
plenty of people that drink and smoke that love their Savior Jesus Christ, and they'll be enjoying like heavens and eternities with Him. When I was talking about that, I was talking about people that recognize that it's not what they want to be doing in their
Right.
life, and they feel that bondage that they're in, the addiction that they want to break. That's what I'm talking to. In my profession, like if I know somebody, I'm a dental hygienist by trade. If I see somebody, they've indicated they smoke, and I ask them if they smoke, and I say, "Do you want to quit?" and they say no. I do not spend another second being like, "Oh, it's so bad for you. You shouldn't be doing that."
Right.
If they say, I quit. I'm trying to quit or whatever, my conversation looks very different with each of those people because at the heart of it, I love them, whatever they want to be doing. And it's definitely not my decision.
Right. You'll facilitate whatever
Yeah,
they want
I'm there to
doing.
support and encourage and cheerlead or whatever.
I love that.
And again, remind like I quit before, but I just picked it back up, and I will say, I quote that stat, like it's average 7 of quits. So,
Wow,
you got
Abby.
one under your belt.
Of course, you have the stats for that.
Well, I mean, who knows? They could
Because-
be old. They could be old because I've been graduated 20 years from college. So
That's great.
a minute. So let's have you close it up for us, Amy.
Okay. So Abby, I just want to ask each person who's listening, wherever you are, where were you when you learned this truth that our desires are made manifest by our choices? Maybe you were in the conference center listening when Elder Neal and Maxwell talked about it in 96,
Mhm.
because he definitely touched on it. Maybe you were listening or have read a talk. Maybe you were reading scriptures on your own, or were in a sacrament meeting where it was talked. My whole point is that,
Once you learned that truth, what did you do with it?
yes, what do we do with it at that point? And that's the other thing too. Remember at the beginning we talked about that there's the same thread all throughout?
Mhm.
Truth is taught over and over and over because Heavenly Father wants to find each one of us where we are. And as we seek for Him, we will learn these truths. There are no surprises in Heavenly Father's plan. There are no surprises in the gospel of Jesus Christ. He continues to teach us because He's merciful, the same lessons over and over, and we receive them at the layer that we're supposed to hear them at. He will find us.
I think it's such a merciful thing to do because we can be listening to the same talk and we can hear something a little bit differently based on what we're ready to hear, but we're judged on what we hear and then take and do with it.
Absolutely.
And so somebody that's not in a place to like really like step up and live like the next higher piece of a law, they'll be judged at the law that they're able to hear with their ears at the place that they're ready
According
to
to where they understand it. Absolutely.
I love it.
I do too.
That tells me about the nature of God.
It does.
He's beautiful.
Thank you so much for being with us here today, everyone. We hope you have a great week, and we'll catch you next time.
Catch you next time, guys.
Bum, ba, da, bum.